the massacre at New Horizon. The twin suns of the Epsilon sector cast golden light across the agricultural fields of New Horizon colony. Dr. Sarah Chin stood at the observation platform of the settlement's central hub, watching farmers guide their hover tractors through fields of modified wheat that would feed nearly 500,000 beings across 3 star systems. The colony had been humanity's pride for 15 years, a testament to what careful planning and hard work could achieve on the frontier of known space. New Horizon wasn't just successful, it was beloved. The colony housed 85,000 humans who had built schools, hospitals, parks, and community centers. Children played in gardens designed to smell like Earth's spring meadows. Elderly couples walked along pathways lined with cherry trees grown from seeds brought across light years. It was peaceful in a way that made people forget how dangerous the galaxy could be. Sarah's communicator chimed with an incoming transmission. The display showed an unknown vessel requesting a connection. She accepted it, expecting perhaps a trade delegation or a lost freighter captain needing directions. Instead, the holographic projection showed a face that made her blood run cold. The Zrath commander had skin like burnished copper, eyes that reflected no warmth, and facial ridges that marked him as high-caste military. His uniform carried decorations Sarah recognized from intelligence briefings, medals awarded for conquest and subjugation. "I am Supreme Commander Vector of the Zrath Empire," the alien announced without preamble. "This star system falls within our ancestral expansion zone. You have established an unauthorized presence in sovereign Zrath space. You will evacuate this colony within 36 hours. Any beings remaining after that deadline will be classified as hostile combatants and dealt with accordingly." Sarah kept her voice steady despite the fear crawling up her spine. "Commander Vector, this colony operates under full Galactic Assembly authorization. Our settlement rights were verified and approved through proper channels. If the Zrath Empire believes there's a territorial dispute, we must resolve this through Assembly arbitration as required by interstellar law." Vector's expression never changed. The Zrath Empire does not recognize the authority of the Assembly over ancestral territories. 36 hours. This is not a negotiation. The transmission ended abruptly. Sarah immediately activated emergency protocols. She contacted the Galactic Assembly's Crisis Response Center, transmitted detailed reports with full documentation of their legal claim to the system, and requested immediate intervention. The responses came back within hours, each one a variation of the same bureaucratic indifference. The Assembly acknowledged receipt of her complaint. They would convene a preliminary review committee. The earliest available hearing date was 8 months away. They advised both parties to maintain peace while proper procedures were followed. 8 months. Sarah looked at the deadline again. 36 hours. The colony's administrator, Marcus Webb, coordinated with every transport vessel within range. But New Horizon had been built for permanence, not evacuation. The colony owned exactly 7 transport ships capable of atmospheric flight, and the largest could carry maybe 300 people. Even if they made multiple trips, they could evacuate perhaps 5,000 colonists before the deadline. That left 80,000 with nowhere to go. Marcus sent desperate messages to nearby systems begging for transport assistance. Some promised to help but couldn't arrive in time. Others simply ignored the requests. A few expressed sympathy but explained they couldn't risk angering the Zrath Empire. Everyone had heard stories about what happened to species that challenged Zrath territorial claims. The 36 hours passed in a blur of frantic activity. Families argued about who should leave and who should stay. Parents put children on transport ships while choosing to remain behind themselves. Teachers stayed with students whose parents couldn't get seats. Medical staff refused to abandon patients. In the end, only 4,700 colonists made it off New Horizon before the deadline expired. Sarah stood in the colony's command center watching the transport ships disappear into the darkness of space. Around her, 80,000 people waited in their homes, in shelters, in the community centers they had built with their own hands. Many believed the Zrath were bluffing. Others trusted that the Assembly would intervene at the last moment. Sarah knew better, but she had nowhere else to go. This was her home. These were her people. The Zrath warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 23 heavy cruisers, each one capable of cracking a planet's crust. They positioned themselves in high orbit, their weapons arrays powered and tracking. Sarah tried one final time to reach Commander Vector, to plead for more time, to offer any compromise that might save lives. Her communications were blocked. The Zrath weren't interested in talking. The first orbital strike hit the colony's main hospital. Sarah watched on the command center displays as the building that had delivered 3,000 babies and saved countless lives simply ceased to exist. The energy beam carved through the structure like it was made of paper, and secondary explosions tore through the surrounding blocks as fuel cells and power generators detonated. The second strike targeted the central school complex where teachers had refused to abandon their students. The third hit the residential district where elderly colonists had insisted on remaining in their homes. The bombardment was methodical and precise. The Zrath weren't firing randomly. They were systematically destroying every structure that held concentrations of people. Emergency shelters that colonists had fled to became target priorities. Hospitals, schools, residential towers, community centers, each one carefully selected to maximize casualties. The Zrath wanted this to be a lesson that others would remember. Sarah's hands shook as she tried to coordinate rescue efforts that had no chance of success. Her communicator filled with desperate voices. Parents screaming for help as buildings collapsed around them. Medical staff trying to treat burns and crushing injuries without equipment. Children crying for parents who would never answer. The broadcast reached Earth, reached the assembly, reached civilized space. And the killing continued for 7 hours. When the Zrath finally stopped firing, New Horizon Colony no longer existed as a functioning settlement. 80,312 humans were dead. The survivors numbered in the hundreds, scattered in burned-out buildings and damaged shelters. The Zrath broadcast their message across all frequencies, their words cold and satisfied. This is the fate of those who trespass on Zrath territory. Let all inferior species learn from this example. Strength determines right. Power determines ownership. This is the natural order. Admiral Jessica Rivera received the distress signals aboard the Earth Defense Force flagship Determination while the attack was still ongoing. Her fleet had been conducting exercises 4 days away at maximum speed. She ordered every available ship to converge on New Horizon immediately, knowing with sick certainty they would arrive too late. They did. By the time Earth's vessels reached the Epsilon sector, the Zrath had withdrawn and New Horizon was a graveyard. Rivera walked through the ruins personally. She needed to see it, to understand it, to remember it. Bodies lay where they had fallen. A teacher still clutching a child she had tried to shield. Medical staff dead at their stations trying to save others. Families huddled together in what had once been their homes. Every scene was evidence. Every death was documented. Every horror was recorded. The Earth military collected it all with grim precision. The Galactic Assembly convened an emergency session 3 days after the massacre. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered in the Great Chamber on Axiom Prime, their voices rising in debate and discussion. The Zrath presented carefully edited footage claiming New Horizon had been a covert military installation. The images were obviously fabricated, manipulated to show weapons that had never existed and fortifications that were actually greenhouses. But the evidence provided enough excuse for those who wanted an excuse. The debate stretched on for days. Some species demanded immediate action against the Zrath. Others counseled caution and proper investigation. Committees were formed to study the incident. Subcommittees were created to determine the jurisdiction of the main committees. Economic sanctions were proposed and then diluted until they carried no real weight. The Zrath had calculated correctly. They were powerful enough and wealthy enough to weather symbolic disapproval. They had done this before to other species, and the pattern always played out the same way. Admiral Rivera attended the assembly sessions as part of Earth's delegation. She sat in silence listening to representatives debate procedures and protocols while 80,000 bodies cooled in temporary morgues. She listened to speeches about the importance of following proper channels and respecting the Assembly's measured approach to justice. On the 7th day, when the Assembly announced they would need at least 5 years to conduct a thorough investigation before determining appropriate responses, Rivera stood and walked out. The entire Earth delegation followed her. Outside the Assembly chambers, Rivera found Sarah Chin waiting. The scientist had survived the massacre by pure chance, trapped in an underground storage facility while the bombardment destroyed everything above her. She looked decades older than she had 2 weeks ago. Her hands trembled constantly and her eyes held a haunted quality that Rivera recognized from her own mirror. "They're not going to do anything, are they?" Sarah asked quietly. Rivera met her gaze. "They'll form committees. They'll write reports. They'll issue statements of concern. In 5 years, maybe they'll impose minor trade restrictions. And the Zrath will learn that genocide is an acceptable tool as long as you target species weak enough that nobody wants to risk helping them." Sarah nodded slowly. She had expected this answer, but hearing it confirmed still felt like another death. "So what happens now?" Rivera's expression hardened. Now we stop pretending their rules mean anything. Now we stop being civilized according to their definition. Within 24 hours, Earth's Prime Minister delivered a statement broadcast across every communications network in known space. Her words were brief and direct, chosen with careful precision to leave no doubt about humanity's intentions. The Zrath Empire committed genocide against New Horizon Colony. 80,000 civilians were deliberately murdered in a systematic campaign of terror. The Galactic Assembly has responded with committees, delays, and empty promises. We have seen what their version of civilization means. Earth is withdrawing from all Assembly peacekeeping operations effective immediately. We will pursue justice for New Horizon through our own methods. The Zrath wanted to teach humanity our place in the galactic order. Now we will show them theirs. The transmission ended. Across the galaxy, species tried to interpret Earth's statement. Most dismissed it as emotional rhetoric from a grieving species lashing out in pain. The Zrath laughed openly. Humanity was young, weak, and militarily insignificant. They were about to learn a very painful lesson about challenging true galactic powers. Admiral Rivera returned to her fleet and issued orders that confused her senior officers. The ships weren't concentrating near Zrath space. They weren't preparing for a direct assault on Zrath military targets. Instead, they were scattering across dozens of sectors in what appeared to be random positions. When questioned about the strategy, Rivera's response was simple and chilling. We're not preparing for a battle. We're preparing for a war. And we're going to fight it the way humans fight when someone makes the mistake of truly angering us. The Zrath mobilized 3 battle fleets to crush Earth's pathetic military. They anticipated a quick victory followed by harsh terms that would ensure humanity never challenged them again. They had done this dozens of times to other species. The pattern was predictable and reliable. What the Zrath didn't understand was that humans had studied war for their entire evolutionary history. They had refined it, perfected it, and learned lessons written in the blood of millions. Earth had chosen to be civilized despite knowing exactly how effective they were at organized violence. That choice had been a gift to the galaxy. The Zrath had just convinced humanity to take that gift back. The Galactic Assembly watched and worried. War between member species violated every principle the Assembly existed to prevent. But both sides seemed determined to fight. Diplomats began quietly evacuating from both Earth and Zrath space, having no desire to be caught between two species who refused to listen to reason. Admiral Rivera stood in the command center of the Determination, studying tactical displays showing the positions of every Earth vessel. To conventional military thinking, the deployment made no sense. The ships were too dispersed to support each other. They weren't concentrated near any strategic targets. They simply waited in positions that seemed random. But they weren't random at all. Every human ship was stationed near a Zrath supply line. Fuel convoys, ammunition transports, food shipments, medical supplies, communication relays, maintenance stations. The vast logistical network that kept the Zrath Empire functioning. And those ships were waiting for one signal. Rivera's tactical officer approached with the latest intelligence report. Admiral, the Zrath have rejected all diplomatic overtures. Their response included footage of the New Horizon attack. They want us to know what awaits us. Rivera nodded slowly. Then they've made their choice. Send the signal. All ships, execute Phase 1. Across the galaxy, dozens of Earth vessels received the transmission simultaneously. The seemingly random positions suddenly revealed their purpose. And humanity's war against the Zrath Empire began not with massive battles or glorious charges, but with cold mathematical precision that would teach the galaxy what humans meant when they said they were done being civilized. Humanity's calculated war. The Zrath supply convoy designated Transport Group 73 moved through the Kelter Passage carrying fuel cells that would power the Empire's 5th Fleet for 3 months. The convoy consisted of 18 massive tanker vessels escorted by 4 military frigates. The route had been used safely for decades. The Zrath considered it secure territory, far from any potential threat. The human destroyer Relentless emerged from faster-than-light travel directly in the convoy's path. Before the Zrath escorts could even charge their weapons, the human ship launched a spread of missiles that struck with devastating precision. Not at the military vessels but at the tankers themselves. The fuel cells ruptured and detonated in cascading explosions that consumed the entire convoy. The Relentless disappeared back into faster-than-light travel before Zrath reinforcements could arrive. Total engagement time was 90 seconds. This scene repeated itself across 24 sectors simultaneously. Human ships struck ammunition convoys and vanished. They mined supply routes with sophisticated devices that targeted Zrath vessels specifically. They hacked into communication networks and fed false information that sent reinforcements to empty sectors while real attacks happened elsewhere. They destroyed fuel depots, manufacturing facilities, and repair stations. Every strike was calculated to cripple logistics rather than fight glorious battles. The Zrath military scrambled to respond but found themselves fighting an enemy that refused to engage honorably. Human captains avoided direct confrontation with Zrath warships. They hit soft targets and disappeared before superior forces could arrive. They fought like pirates or terrorists, not like a proper military. It was infuriating and increasingly effective. The three Zrath battle fleets advancing toward Earth space suddenly found themselves facing supply shortages. The Third Fleet reported ammunition reserves down to 40%. The Seventh Fleet was rationing fuel. The Ninth Fleet lost contact with half its support vessels and couldn't determine if they had been destroyed or simply couldn't navigate without working communication relays. The mighty armadas that were supposed to crush humanity were slowly starving in the void. The Galactic Assembly convened yet another emergency session. Representatives from dozens of species protested Earth's tactics with genuine outrage. There were rules to warfare. Supply lines were considered civilian infrastructure. Medical ships carried protected status. Communication networks were neutral territory. Humanity was violating every convention of civilized combat that the Assembly had carefully constructed over centuries. Ambassador Chin stood before the Assembly chamber, her expression cold and controlled. She waited for the protest to die down before speaking. When she did, her words cut through the chamber like a blade. You want rules? The Zrath murdered 80,000 civilians in a deliberate campaign of genocide. Those were the rules they chose. We're simply playing the game they started. If you don't like it, perhaps you should have stopped them before they forced us to respond. A Kelthani representative, his species known for military honor and traditional warfare, rose to speak. The humans fight without dignity. They attack supply vessels. They target civilian infrastructure. They refuse honorable engagement. This is not warfare. This is barbarism that shames all civilized species. Chin turned to face the Kelthani directly. You call our methods barbaric. You want honorable warfare. Let me tell you what honorable war looks like from a human perspective. It's millions dead in trenches. It's cities reduced to radioactive ash. It's entire civilizations destroying each other until nothing remains but memories and graves. We learned warfare in the hardest school imaginable. We perfected it over thousands of years of constant conflict. We know exactly what honorable war means, and it means maximum casualties on both sides. She paused, letting her words settle across the chamber. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. We chose this approach specifically to minimize deaths. The Zrath fleets are intact. Their crews are alive. Their warships are simply immobilized without fuel or ammunition. If we had fought the way you call honorable, we would have destroyed them completely. Tens of thousands would already be dead. We are showing restraint and you condemn us for it. The chamber fell silent. Species began to understand something uncomfortable. Humanity wasn't being barbaric. They were being efficient. And efficiency in warfare meant fewer casualties overall, not more. The discomfort came from watching a species that truly understood violence in ways most Assembly members never had. While the Assembly debated, Admiral Rivera executed the next phase of her strategy. Intelligence reports showed the Zrath were conscripting civilian vessels from their subject species to carry supplies to their stranded fleets. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, even personal craft were being pressed into service. The Zrath threatened the families of anyone who refused. Rivera issued orders across the fleet. All ships, we have incoming civilian convoys under duress. Standard humanitarian protocols. Intercept but do not fire. Broadcast on all frequencies that we are not their enemy. Offer safe passage to any vessel that surrenders. As the conscripted convoys approached human positions, Earth vessels broadcast messages in every language spoken by Zrath subject species. The words were simple and repeated constantly. We are the Earth Defense Force. We know you are being forced into danger. We are not your enemy. Your oppressors are using you as shields. We will not harm you. Any ship that disengages will receive safe passage and protection. You do not have to die for the Zrath. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Civilian ships stopped moving the moment they heard the broadcasts. Their crews, who had been sailing toward what they believed was certain death, suddenly saw an escape. They surrendered gladly. Zrath military commanders screamed threats at their conscripted subjects. but human escort vessels were already deploying to protect the surrendering civilians. Any Zrath warship that approached found itself targeted by human weapons. The message was clear. These people were under Earth's protection now. Within days, thousands of refugees from Zrath subject species found themselves aboard human vessels or stationed at human facilities. They expected to be treated as prisoners or slaves, as the Zrath had always treated conquered peoples. Instead, they found medical care, food, and respect. Many couldn't process the difference. Sarah Chin volunteered to work with the refugee communities. She was still having nightmares about New Horizons, still waking up screaming, but she wanted to help. She found herself talking with a Hessian mother whose son had been conscripted into Zrath labor camps 3 years earlier. "Why do you help us?" the Hessian asked, her translated voice carrying genuine confusion. "We have no power. We cannot repay you. We are nothing." Sarah thought about her colleagues dead in the hospital. She thought about the teachers who had stayed with their students. She thought about the families huddled together in their final moments. "Because someone should have helped us," Sarah said quietly. "Because the assembly didn't. Because if we only protect people who can give us something in return, we're no better than the Zrath." The Zrath Empire was fracturing under the pressure. Without supplies, their military fleets were helpless. Without conscripted labor, their economy was collapsing. Without control of information, their population was questioning everything they had been taught. Human broadcasts reached Zrath citizens showing unedited footage of what their military did in their name. Many were horrified. Internal arguments broke out between military factions. Some wanted to negotiate. Others demanded total war even if it meant the Empire's destruction. Admiral Rivera monitored the Zrath military situation carefully. Their fleets were dying slowly in space from starvation, equipment failures, and disease. The deaths were completely preventable. All the Zrath leadership had to do was surrender the commanders responsible for New Horizon and accept reasonable peace terms. They refused. Rivera's executive officer approached her in the command center. "Admiral, we could end this quickly. One strike on their command structure. Decapitate their leadership. The Empire would collapse." Rivera shook her head. "No. They want us to be monsters. They want to prove that humanity is barbaric and uncontrolled. We're not giving them that satisfaction. We'll wait. Their people will force the change we want, or their military will die in the dark. Either way, we win without becoming what they claim we are." The waiting was harder than fighting. But humanity had learned patience along with everything else. 3 weeks into the blockade, human intelligence detected a high-value target. The Zrath Supreme Command was meeting at their orbital headquarters above the homeworld. Every commander responsible for New Horizon would be present. Rivera saw an opportunity that might end the war without further bloodshed. Special Forces teams trained for months for shipboard operations launched from stealth vessels positioned throughout the sector. They inserted simultaneously at 12 different points on the Zrath command facility. The teams moved through corridors using intelligence gathered from surveillance devices planted weeks earlier. They knew every patrol route, every security checkpoint, every blind spot in the defensive systems. The Zrath guards expected an external assault with massive ships and orbital bombardment. They never expected enemies walking through their corridors. Human operators used non-lethal gas to disable guards they encountered. No shots fired. No alarms triggered. They reached the council chamber where Supreme Command was meeting. Commander Vector was in mid-sentence when the doors opened and human soldiers entered. He reached for his weapon. A stunner dropped him before his hand reached the holster. The entire engagement lasted 40 seconds. 0 fatalities on either side. The extraction was almost as quick as the insertion. Human teams withdrew with their prisoners and vanished before Zrath military forces realized the facility had been breached. Total operation time was under 3 hours. The architects of the New Horizon massacre were now in custody with documented proof of their orders. The Galactic Assembly convened a war crimes tribunal on neutral ground. With the galaxy watching and human ships positioned throughout multiple sectors, they had no choice but to proceed immediately. The evidence was overwhelming. Recorded orders from Vector authorizing the targeting of civilians. Communications discussing how to maximize casualties. Footage of the bombardment cross-referenced with tactical data proving deliberate intent. The Zrath defense attempted traditional arguments about military necessity and historical precedent. These arguments had worked before. Sarah Chin took the witness stand carrying a data tablet. The defense claims military necessity. I want to read some of these military threats. She began listing names and ages. Jennifer Martinez, age 4. David Kim, age 7. Sarah Williams, age 6 months. Krishna Patel, age 9. Shall I continue? I have 80,000 more names. The tribunal chamber fell silent. The defense cites historical precedent, Sarah continued. They're correct. The Zrath have done this before. 12 times we found records of. Each time the victims reported their genocide to this assembly. Each time the assembly formed committees and conducted investigations. By the time conclusions were reached, the victims were dead and buried. The precedent is clear. The assembly system protects perpetrators, not victims. Admiral Rivera testified next about humanity's response. We responded with force because someone had to. Because a system that takes 5 years to respond to genocide isn't justice. It's complicity dressed in procedure. Because if we accept that protecting civilians must wait for committees and debates, then we accept that some lives don't matter. Humanity doesn't accept that. The trial lasted 3 weeks. The verdict was unanimous. The Zrath commanders were guilty of genocide and crimes against sentient beings. They received life imprisonment with all assets seized for reparations. But the verdict went further. Under unprecedented pressure, the Assembly voted to reform its justice system completely. Rapid response protocols for atrocity crimes. Mandatory intervention timelines. Accountability for officials who delayed action. The reforms were the most significant change to Assembly law in 5 centuries.